Hey guys, welcome to our second podcast. I'm very excited today because I get to interview Tiffany. Hey Tiffany.
Hey Korin.
I know quite a lot about her life already, but I think I'm going to ask her some questions that I don't know so much about. Some questions. So are we ready?
I'm ready. Let's do this.
Okay, let's do it. So tell us a little bit about your life before Pilates.
Well, I grew up I'm not going all the way back, but I grew up in Oregon, and I grew up as a figure skater, and I skated my whole life. And when I was 18, I turned professional and joined the Ice Capades and did the whole Ice Capades tour thing for a few years. And then I came home after that and went into teaching ice skating. And it was through ice skating that I found Pilates. And my mom used to go take Pilates classes once a week from this lady named Anita. And my mom kept saying, "Oh, you need to try it. You need to try it." And I kind of thought, my mom was doing it. It can't be that great of a workout, right? Mm-hmm. So for Christmas, she bought me a package. It was like $500, and it was 10 private sessions. And this was like 20 years ago. It was 10 private sessions. And I went to my first class and I was hooked. I loved it. And I figured out a way. I realized that 10 private lessons was not going to go that far. So I exchanged it for group classes. So it would last longer, that $500. And for my birthday, which is April 1st, it's coming up, just so you all know.
Get that one in there.
So for my birthday, she bought me another pass. And so it kind of like kept me going for a while. And the entire time my teacher kept saying, you're really kind of natural at this. You should think about teaching. And I already taught ice skating. So the teaching thing kind of came hand in hand. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yeah, I kind of like this. And I really liked it. It was, to be honest, it was the first fitness thing that I did not quit. I feel like.
And was this reformer or mat work?
It was reformer. I had tried mat work, but I bought a Windsor Pilates video probably 30 years ago. And I think they are teaching hundreds breathing. I remember thinking, this is ridiculous. What is this, a Lamaze class? And I never did it again.
I'm going to have a baby here.
What is this? Like, the progressive breathing and hundreds breathing. I hated it. And I never did it again. But then when I went and took a real reformer class, I loved it. And I was good at it. And I think you kind of gravitate towards things, at least I do, that you're naturally kind of good at. I hate sucking at things.
Like, yeah, no, we all do.
I think good at it. And I think because I was a professional athlete and I was forced to train, I didn't want to do anything I didn't like. I didn't want to climb stairs. I didn't want to do plyometrics. I didn't want to be on Stairmaster. All of those kind of things I had signed up before, and I would just quit. But this kept my attention, and I loved it. I loved how I loved the choreography of it. I liked the discipline of it, and I was hooked.
So why did you stop ice skating? Is that because you found Pilates?
I never meant to stop ice skating. I mean, I stopped touring because it's one of those things that it's hard to have a normal life because you're on the road for 10 months out of the year. And I'm a homebody. I love staying home. Quarantine, I got to tell you, didn't suck too much for me because I love being at home. That's where Korin and I are a little different. She's like going crazy. If you follow her on Instagram, you will notice she will take a walk, rain or shine right now because she wants to get out of her house. Me, I love it. And sometimes I'll be talking to Korin and she's like, "Where did you go to eat? What are you doing?" It's like she's trying to live through me and my freedom.
Yeah, I'm like, Tiffany, why aren't you doing more? You have the freedom to do it.
I love it. So I stopped touring just because I missed home and I wanted a normal life. And I started teaching ice skating and I loved it. And I think that's where I decided that I really liked teaching. I think my talent wasn't so much ice skating, even though I had worked so hard at it and I was okay at it. But I think I was a better teacher than I was an ice skater. And so it kind of started getting me on that path that I really liked teaching. And then I moved to Utah. When I moved to Utah, there wasn't a lot of ice skating. And it wasn't enough that you could make a living at. And
there was a lot of snow.
There's a lot of snow.
So why is there not ice skating?
Well, so it's a different dynamic here in Utah. People have about 6 kids in their families. So, and so it's ice skating is an expensive sport. And so it's not something that's that feasible for people to put their kids in ice skating. A lot of people put their kids in dance because you can put all your kids in dance. It's not as expensive. Soccer, team sports are not nearly as expensive as individual sports. And so there's a lot of ice rinks here, which is really sad. I'm still in Utah. But so I knew I wasn't going to be able to sustain a living teaching ice skating. And that's when I started teaching Pilates, and it just kind of took over. I never meant to not teach or have anything to do with ice skating. I thought I would for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. But I just started teaching Pilates, and it kind of took over. And I actually enjoy teaching Pilates a lot more than ice skating. So
now, you said that your mom brought you your first Pilates classes, and tell us a little bit about your mummy, your lovely mummy, who I've met a couple of times now when I've come to visit you. She actually inspired you, didn't she? She obviously inspired you to get into Pilates, but why was that? What did she do? Tell us about that.
So my mom and I have always been really close, and I know when I was on tour, I called her every single day. And even when I was like in Australia for a year, I called her every day. And do you remember when you could call collect 1-800-collect?
No,
did you guys
did that in England?
I'm sure their phone bill, my parents' phone bill, I'm sure it was.
Right, when you reverse the charges.
Yeah.
We could do that.
And she never declined my calls. But we're super close. And as a little girl, and this is really silly, as a little girl for career day at my school, I dressed up as my mom. I just wanted to be her. I didn't know what she did. I just wanted to be her. So she had a
pretty dream job, didn't she?
She was. So she danced professionally, and she danced her whole life, but then she got married and she worked with my dad. I mean, it's kind of like, I think in the 80s, a lot of people, like my dad, earned the living. And I think this is very similar to that podcast that you actually sent me. My dad brought in the money, and my mom did kind of helped him with his books and stuff like that, and worked in his office, and raised us. But I loved her. I thought she was the most beautiful person in the world, and I wanted to be just like her. And we're still really close.
That's so lovely. You are really close because you live together now, don't you?
Yeah. And I give her a hard time too. Remember when you were here and she kept asking, so now what is this for? And I'm like, our website. Hello. Remember that weekend we were
trying
watching?
To explain anything technical to your mom and dad. It's just true. The most difficult conversation. I mean, my dad used to call things like FaceTube, and I'd be going, no, Dad, it's Facebook, YouTube. This is going back a little bit now, but like, for God's sake. And I was trying to explain to him how to do a Zoom call the other day, and I was just like, let's just call each other. It's fine.
Let's just call each other. It's fine.
Just call each other the old-fashioned way.
I know we're going to be in that same boat someday, right? We're going to be the ones that are confused. So,
God, I know. Well, a bit like doing this podcast, getting these microphones to work. That took us half an hour, didn't it?
It did, and then she dropped it.
And then I dropped it. I'm really hoping it's working. But going back to your family too, tell us about, how did you meet your husband? Because you met him in Utah.
I met him in Utah, and we met on Match.com.
Yes.
So it actually works. And the funny thing is that I do feel like it was fate that we actually met, because so I was raised Catholic. He was raised Mormon. And he, on his profile, like on Match.com, if you're not familiar, you can set up your profile so you only see people that align with your values. Or if you want someone who's over 6 feet tall, the only profiles you will see are of men who are over 6 feet tall. And you can also, you can narrow it down by religion. And he had his narrowed down by, he wanted to only date another girl who was also Mormon. And, I know, right? So
did you lie?
I did not lie. I had so I had a girlfriend who was Mormon and I wanted her to try Match.com. She would not try it. She thought it was like shady. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Look, I will show you all the Mormon guys that are out there on Match.com. And so for that one time that I was showing her for like 10 minutes, I switched my profile so that I would only see Mormon guys in a certain age range who lived in Salt Lake City, Utah. And so his came up and I was reading his profile and I had forgot I had changed it. And I think I winked at him and then he sent me a message. And so we started corresponding and he thought
that you were your friend. He saw your friend's picture.
No, he saw my profile. She didn't have a profile yet, but I had switched my profile settings temporarily so she could see the Mormon boys. And so we never realized that I did that. What's that?
Sliding door. It's like Sliding Doors, that film. Like
I haven't seen that. Is that kind of like that?
It's not Gwyneth Paltrow. Well, no, it's not like that at all. But it's just the fact that you chose one direction and that took you in a different route. So, yeah. You just watched Sliding Doors.
We realized that we really liked each other and we didn't care. I mean, we eventually realized it, and I think I realized it actually before he did because I was excited about him because he's nice, but I didn't take our correspondence seriously because I realized once he realized who I really was, not Mormon, Catholic, that he may not. So I didn't like when he would message me, I didn't respond right away because I didn't think it was going to work out. But I'm glad I did respond because we got married and we have 2 babies now. So it worked.
But then he met the hot blonde in real life and he went, oh, Mormon. Whatever.
Know, right. And I always joke at think of all the nice Mormon girls that he dated that didn't land him and I did. They're probably like, damn it.
And he is a gem. He's lovely.
He is.
So what is it about, let's go back to Pilates a little bit now, I guess. And what is it about Pilates that really resonated with you? Why did it, I think sometimes you have that kind of light bulb moment, don't you? Why was it? What was it about Pilates?
You know what? For the first time, when you're doing Pilates, it doesn't kill you. So you're always like, well, I guess sometimes my classes do. But, it was moving out. It was more organic of movement. It wasn't like, okay, we're going to go do arms today. And then tomorrow we're going to do legs. You worked everything. It just seemed so efficient. You worked every muscle, you did every plane of movement in 1 hour. And I felt like I had results faster from Pilates than anything else I had ever done. And I didn't hate it. It didn't suck to do. It's not like going and running hills,
Yeah, you look forward to going to class.
Yeah, I really liked it.
You talk about this quite often, obviously, that the fact that you came from a very classical background with Pilates, but then obviously now you're very far from classical.
I'm on the classical Pilates snobs hit list, I'm sure. And so are you.
I definitely am.
I liked the structure. I still love classical Pilates. I liked the structure of it. I liked the discipline of it. And I remember when I was studying to take my teacher training exam, I would do the full workout once a day. And it's really challenging, the full workout. You really can't do it more than once a day. It's that hard. And I loved it. And I didn't understand why other people didn't love it. It took me 10 years to figure that out. But there's just something that I just really, and I see that in my clients too. After their first few classes, they're hooked. They're like, I love this. And that's how I felt too. Not everyone loves it. And that's the thing. I have really good friends. My sister-in-law, she doesn't take Pilates from me, and that's okay. She does something else. And fitness should be, if you're going to stick with a fitness program, it needs to be something that you like, or else you're just going to quit eventually, So
I absolutely agree. But so you fell in love with Pilates, you decided to open your own studio, and that was in Salt Lake City, is that right?
Yeah. And it I never meant to be a Pilates teacher. I really first started getting trained in Pilates so that I could use it to help my figure skaters, because I was teaching figure skating at the time. And I wanted, because the off-ice training programs that they did were really, really hard on their growing bodies. They were doing a lot of plyometrics, a lot of stair climbing, and it was just a lot on these little growing bodies. And when I started doing Pilates and we did a jump board class one day, I'm like, this is perfect for training for figure skaters. So that's when I decided to get trained. And it was just to supplement their off ice training. It was never to be a business for me. And then I had a reformer in my house and I started teaching my sister-in-law, and then she kept bringing friends. And then I'm like, well, maybe I should charge these people. And so I literally saved up enough money to buy another reformer. So then I had two, and then I saved up enough money to open up a little studio, and it just kind of snowballed and grew from there. I had no business plan. Again, no business plan. Kind of like our podcast. We had no plan on how this was going to work. We're just doing it. And that's how I've done everything in life. And that's probably why I don't always succeed, because I just do it without a plan, but I always work really hard at it. So,
but it works for you. You work hard at it. It works. So you started your classical Pilates. You taught classical Pilates for 10 years or so. Is that right?
Yeah.
And then,
until I saw you.
and then we met.
And then literally, this sounds so corny, and it sounds like I'm a psycho stalker, but I saw Korin on Instagram, and it was a friend of mine, Elizabeth, who also teaches for me, and she's on Dynamic Pilates as well. She said, you've got to look at Instagram. There's this lady I've been following. She mentioned you and Sean Marshall. And she's like, there's this one lady who does all her videos in black and white. That was Sean. And then there's this other lady who, they're both from the UK, and it's Power Pilates UK. She has the coolest stuff. And when I saw Korin's videos on Instagram, it definitely was like that aha moment or that light bulb moment. I'm like, why have I been doing the same workout every single day when you could do so much more on the reformer? I think I was so trained and almost brainwashed in a way that Pilates needs to be done this way because that's how Joseph Pilates did it. Or some people will call him Joe, and if there's not a black and white photo of him doing it, then it didn't exist. And I don't know why I just bought into that for 10 years. And then I saw Korin doing it differently. And I was like, wow, like all of a sudden I just started thinking of all these different things that I could do. And it was just because I saw her doing it. And then I started.
And I love the fact that you just realized, you just kind of said to yourself, right, okay, I'm not going to carry on and just change the original business that I've got and change it into dynamic classes. I'm going to close this business down and I'm going to start up.
Yeah,
all over again.
That was like jumping.
Why did you do it that way?
So I tried it. And I love my clients that I had before, but I had them for 10 years and I let them become in charge of me. Basically it was a social hour. They were working out, but we did the same workout almost every time. We did the classical workout. They chatted a lot and they became my friends. And I still love these people to this day, but I don't think they took me seriously as their leader or their instructor. And so when I went in and I started to change things, they're like, hold up. No. We're doing hundreds breathing next. And I'm like, no. We're going to do it this way today. And they just laughed, and it's my own fault. And I think that's one of the biggest pieces of advice I give to people now who are opening their own business is you are in charge. Always stay in charge of your clients. You know what I mean? Because they're going to respect you more if you lead the class and not let them lead the class. And no one liked the changes that I was doing. And if you watch how Korin and I teach, we go really, really fast. Everything is choreographed. Everything weaves in and out. And if you're not listening, you're going to miss the instruction on how to transition to the next side. And because they liked to chat, it's my fault for letting them to get to that point. They weren't listening, so they weren't hearing the instructions, and it was a disaster. It didn't work. And I felt really, really defeated. And I thought, and I was pregnant again, and this was with my second baby. And I thought, you know what? I think I'm just going to go do Pilates in my garage by myself. And I'll watch Korin's videos,
but you didn't.
And my husband was like, he's like, why? And I'm like, I don't make that much money and nobody wants to do it my way. and I because I also train teachers, and I would go down to Arizona to my good friend's studio, and in Arizona, her name is Kinsey. She's also on Dynamic Pilates TV. And she had just opened up a business and they were doing so well. And I would tell my husband, they're making this much money. They're doing so well. He's like, well, what are they doing different? I'm like, everything. He's like, well, why don't we do it that way? Like, so just the way that her business was structured, it was structured to make money and eventually you could sell it. It wasn't just a place to go teach Pilates. Like it was just set up completely different. And he's like, well, why don't we just close the studio and open up another one and do it the way that she's doing it and then teach the way you want to teach. And I'm like, oh, so if it weren't for him, I would just be teaching in our garage. He's the one who's like, no, you're kind of good at this. I think you should. I'm so glad he did.
I'm so glad he did.
I know. And so I literally moved the studio 30 minutes away. And we picked a demographic that was similar to my friend's Kinsey's demographic in Arizona. So it worked. It really worked. It was scary because we invested a lot of money. We bought all new equipment, built the new studio, and for like a month, no one came.
and you did this, just to mention, you were heavily pregnant, and then didn't you open when Ricky was about a month old?
Ricky was about a month old when I opened. So I don't get postpartum depression. I think I get overambitious when I'm pregnant. You probably do too. That's when we started Dynamic Pilates TV. We
right
just
after. Talked about that. I know
but,
we both literally did the same thing. I know I've just had a baby. I know I'm going to take more things on.
Exactly. But
brand new business.
You know what? I kind of feel like, so literally no one came for like 2 months. I mean, like there were people there, but I would look around this beautiful studio. It was everything I always wanted. It was pink. It was fluffy. It was sparkly, brand new equipment. And I kept thinking, well, let's enjoy it before we have to close because no one's showing up. So I literally spent the entire day, every day there. And I had a babysitter watching the kids in the childcare room, in the studio. And I just started making up all the flows that I now teach today. So if I didn't have that month or two of like alone time and just to play in the studio, that's when I started coming up with a lot of these flows. So, and then people started coming and now the business is great. But I remember thinking, oh shit, no one's here.
And what was it? How did you get the people to come through the door? Did you advertise? Because I think that's one of the biggest things, isn't it, about when people open a new business? They want to know how to market it. How did you do that?
I think every year it changes a little bit, and every market is different. Social media is huge right now, and so developing a social media presence. I also opened a studio where there's no Pilates, which I wanted because I wanted to dominate the market. I didn't want to go where there's 10 other studios in walking distance. Mm-hmm. It just took time. It took I think the best for our business, the best advertising is word of mouth. So just getting people in. And it slowly happened. We're in a really good location. We're right next to a grocery store. So that helps. And, there's different, I think in America, we have something called Groupon where people can buy a Groupon pass. And
we have that too.
It's significantly discounted. And so you don't really make a lot of money off of it. You have to offer your services half off and Groupon keeps half of it. So if you normally charge $30 a class, you're going to sell it for $15 on Groupon and you'll keep $7.50. So you don't make anything off of it, but it's also helping bring people in the door, which is the most important thing.
Awareness.
Yeah.
So you do so much. Obviously, we know about Dynamic Pilates TV. We just done the podcast about Dynamic Pilates TV, but you do so many things. Do you feel quite satisfied and content with things now, or are you the kind of person who's always striving for more, always thinking about the next thing that you're going to do?
I am an entrepreneur at heart for sure. Literally, I have the studio. Then we had COVID. That's probably a whole nother podcast. And then we have Dynamic Pilates TV. I have my workshops. I just love new opportunities. And,
But do you feel quite content where you are right now? Would there be anything that you'd change about your life now?
I don't think I would change anything. I think I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. If you would have told me, though, 20 years ago, I would be teaching Pilates, I would have been like, whoa, what? I'm an ice skater. No, that's my dream. It's so funny. You think your dream is something for so long, and then something better comes along. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm content. I'm so fortunate. And Korin and I, we've talked about how lucky we are that we developed Dynamic Pilates TV a year before COVID happened. So like that literally saved the both of us, that we already had that online platform. I'm really happy with it. But, I think there's so much more coming too. And we were talking about goals earlier, and Korin's goals, they're pretty lofty. So I don't want to let her down. I don't want to let her down.
To do this year, Tiff.
We do.
So tell us, like, what would be your typical day? What's a day in the life of Tiffany?
My typical day, every day is different. And I'm trying really, really hard to not say yes to everything. And I feel like my family gets the shaft a little bit sometimes. I usually wake up. My husband is super helpful. He wakes the kids up and gets them ready for school while I get ready. And then I take the kids to school, get to work. I like to get to work half an hour to an hour before my class. I'm the type of person that has to prepare what I teach. I feel like confidence comes from preparation. And if I'm not prepared, it's a shit show, literally. And that's the way my brain works. I have attention deficit, and you're going to notice it in this show because I'm going to stray quite a bit. But if I have a plan, I know the class is going to be good. If I wing it, there's a 50-50 chance that it's going to suck. So I always plan it out, 100% plan it out. I know what I'm teaching the night before. And then I get to the studio the morning of, and I just go over everything. And then if I'm teaching a Zoom class, I send out my Zoom links. I usually teach about 2 classes a day. And then the rest, I work on Dynamic Pilates TV stuff, and I pick up the kids. And you and I have talked about how, like, when your kids start school and they go to school from 8 to 3, you're like, oh, that's going to be so much time. It is not enough time to get it all done before I have to pick them up at 3.
3 o'clock.
And then life is over.
Far too quickly.
When you pick those kids up, life is over, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, just even doing this interview tonight with the kids running in and out of the door. Yeah,
it's true.
That you cannot do anything with them around, with the little darlings. I feel like I've actually learned a little bit more about you, Tiffany, tonight.
I know, because we usually talk about I know a little bit about your life before Pilates, but we usually talk about things that are happening now, and our kids and our businesses.
It's quite fast paced, isn't it? When because we do speak to each other quite a lot, actually, considering that we're on the other side of the world. But when we do speak, it's we're on obviously a hugely different time zone. So it's always kind of like, oh, we need to speak about this, we need to speak about that. So yeah, we don't always get to understand how things were before and to learn about each other. And especially because with this year, we've not really seen each other at all, have we? In a whole year.
No. And I think
a lot of catching up to do.
We saw each other a year ago, and we launched our app, and Korin came. I remember the day that I picked you up, you're like, oh my gosh, have you heard about the coronavirus? And I'm like, what? And you're like, yeah. And I'm like, Korin, it's going to pass. I'm like the super optimistic. The glass is not just half full, it's like overflowing. And she's like, what if they shut us down? I'm like, it's not go. They're not going to shut you down, Korin. And then like she gets home and she's like, great, they're shutting us down. And I'm like, wow, really?
So yeah, you're very lucky. You actually only got shut down for a month, wasn't it?
We got shut down for a month, but and I was talking to another friend who owns a studio in Utah too. We got shut down for a month, but you never knew. Remember, it was supposed to be 2 weeks to flatten the curve. They're still saying that, right? But you never know what was next. Every day in that month, something new happened. Like they kept changing the restrictions. And so you're constantly checking, I was constantly checking the website here, the health department's website, to see, okay, now what do I have to do? And so I kept thinking, I was trying to think of as many business opportunities as possible in case my studio closed. And I was doing that all the way till November. I felt like I was doing as many Zoom classes as I could, and then you and I were trying to get as many classes filmed as we could, because we didn't know, would there be a point where we couldn't even go to our studios? We didn't know. And we don't have reformers at home. So you and I were recording like crazy, or filming like crazy. And I never got to the point where I could sit home and watch Netflix like a lot of people. I was so jealous of those people that got to stay home for a little bit. So yeah, physically I was only shut.
No, I'm on Netflix all the time.
I know she is. Physically,
we are
I never
still
got
in lockdown here in the UK.
She really is still in lockdown, so I feel bad for saying this. But so I was only physically shut down for a month. But our reformers had to be 10 feet apart. I know it sounds like, oh yeah, at least you were open. We were open, but it was still really, really stressful. You didn't know if people were going to come back. I didn't know if people would come back, and would it have financially made more sense just to close? And I know businesses did do that because the restrictions were so tight that they couldn't afford to have one or two reformers in their studio and pay the rent and pay teachers and actually bring money home. Mm-hmm. So a lot of businesses, luckily I had a big space that I could eliminate some reformers and still able to pay our teachers and turn a profit. So we lucked out, but it's been a really stressful year. I feel like I've been chasing my tail since March, since you left.
Since I left, I know. Well, hopefully it will not be too much longer before we can see each other again. I'm thinking, I'm being optimistic. I'm hoping for this year at least. I don't know when.
I know. We're hoping the end of the summer, and I'm hoping to come because our families have not met each other. Our husbands are met, and I think they like each other, Yeah, UK. Well, we've not met your kids. I mean, I've met your kids because I've been to America, but they've not been here yet. And that was something that we were planning on doing. We've actually got a parish trip waiting paid for
us, all booked, paid for, which we were supposed to do. I don't even know when. Was that last year or this year? Last year.
We were supposed to do it last April.
April.
And we were taking our moms because they were both turning 70.
They both turned 70.
And we're taking them to Paris, and it's all paid for. And then this happened. So we have to do that.
It was such a pretty trip. It was going to be so amazing, wasn't it?
And
but we're going to do it, yeah.
And that just shows that we're good friends, that we want to share experiences like that. And I want to bring the family out. Hopefully we're thinking about doing a whole month. Friends like, what?
She told me this. I was like, yeah, come and stay.
No, she's like, come and stay. I'm like, you don't want us to stay in your house for a month. But we want to bring the kids because I just know the kids will have so much fun.
They will have so much
fun. What if our kids hate each other?
You can stay with us for a few days. I'm joking.
For a few days. We love it. But so we do want to do that. And I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Well, we'll
get there.
Brilliant. I love that. Lovely little chat with us. And now we're going to actually do a chat with me.